Hello builders, welcome to another video. I am Laszlo and today I'm going to talk about a common scenario when you work with the API gateway. So by default the API gateway doesn't have any authorization implemented, so anyone can access your resources. But in most real-world scenarios you would need to secure it. In this video I'm going to show you how to do it with Cognito user pools. But before we dive in, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any of the upcoming videos. So let's look at our architecture. We have API gateway, which has a Lambda function behind it, or many Lambda functions. And we want to secure it, so whenever our client makes a request to the API gateway, he has to provide some type of authentication. So we can see what actions it's authorized to perform. So the flow in this case would be the following. The client will make a request to Cognito user pools to authenticate. It will get back some tokens, an ID token, an access token, and a refresh token. And then it will use the token, the ID token in this case, in the authorization header that it's going to send to the API gateway. Then API gateway will check this token with the Cognito user pools, and if everything is fine, then it will grant the access to the Lambda function, so it's able to invoke the Lambda function successfully. So this is the flow. This is what we're going to build in the AWS management console. Here I am back in the console. Now I will go to Cognito. And I'm going to create a user pool. So you have this handy link here to create a user pool, or you could just go here to user pools and then you have another link. So let's click on create user pool, and then you have to provide a sign-in option. I will want my users to sign in with email. So you see this user pool is actually a user directory, let's say. And it will contain all my users. They will have to sign up and sign in, and I want them to use their emails for that. So that is the first step. Then I can set some password policies for my users. Here I'm going to set a custom password policy, and I'm going to uncheck all these. You shouldn't do that, but for testing I want this password to be as simple as possible. You should have as complex as a password as you can, because it's important to have a complex password so hackers won't be able to guess it easily. Then multi-factor authentication, I'm going to disable it for this demo. You could set it up if you want, you could require it, or you can have it optionally, and so on. Account recovery options, let's leave them on the default. Then I want to enable self-service sign up for my users, allow Cognito to send email messages. I could set some additional attributes like address, birth date, family name, things like that, but I'm going to ignore that for now. You could also set custom attributes, like for example AWS experience. You would want to ask this from your users when they sign up, but we're just going to ignore it at the moment. Now let's click on next. Here we want to select what kind of email delivery options we want to use. I'm going to use Cognito for this demo, but for production as the simple email service is recommended, because Cognito can only send 50 emails a day. So use Cognito just for testing purposes. Okay, so let's click on next. I need to give it a user pool name. Let's say Majestic users. This is my Majestic.cloud user pool. I want to use the Cognito hosted UI. So the Cognito hosted UI will allow you to use a pre-built UI made by AWS for you, which allows your users to sign up, sign in, and recover their password. And you can customize this hosted UI if you want to. For that, you will have to provide also a domain name for this hosted UI. You can use a Cognito domain like I'm going to do for now, so Majestic Shop, or you could use a custom domain, your own domain, but in that case you need to set it up in Route 53 and things like that. Let's just use this Cognito domain, which is available for me, and we're going to use that. Then you would have to set up an initial app client. You can have many app clients. For example, you could have an app client for your web app, another one for your mobile app, and they will be connected to the same user pool. So they are going to use the same pool of users. Let's give to this app client a name. Let's call it web shop client. Actually, web client. It's better this way. Let's just leave everything like it is, except this, where you have to provide a callback URL. So this is where your user will be redirected after it's signed in or signed out or stuff like that. In the advanced app client settings, you can set up things like how long the refresh token, access token, and ID token expire, and things like that. I'm only going to select these other authentication flows. I need this to do some additional authentication flows. I'm going to show that to you later. And I think everything else can stay as it is. So let's click on next. And now my Cognito user pool. This is just a review screen where you are shown all the options you selected. And let's click on create user pool. So my user pool is now ready. If I click on it, I can see I have no users at all. I could import users or things like that. I want to go to the hosted UI. So here on the app integration tab, you will have your web client, which I've created earlier. So let's click on this web client, and here I should have a link to the hosted UI. So let's click on this. I'm opening it in a new tab. And you see this is the hosted UI from AWS. You can customize this if you want to. And I want to sign up with a user. So let's sign up. I'm going to use an email, hello@Majestic.cloud, and I'm going to use a very weak password. Okay. And let's sign up. And it will ask me for an authentication, a verification code, which is sent to my email address. I'm just going to grab that verification code, which just arrived, paste it in, and confirm the account. And now it redirected me to the callback URL, which I said it should be Majestic.cloud, and it also provided this code, which you can use. Now, if I go back to my user pool and I look at users, let's refresh it, and you see that I have a user with an email address. The email is verified, it's confirmed, everything is fine. So my user is signed in actually. It performed the sign-in step on that hosted UI. Now, in a real world scenario, you would have, for example, your front end on a static website, having it like, for example, in React or Vue.js or whatever you have it. And you would sign in your user and you would get back, you have methods in the Cognito libraries to get back the token, the ID token, and you have to provide this when in an authorization header. We're going to see this flow just in a minute. Before that, let me show you my API gateway, which I want to protect. So I already created it just to save time. So this is a very simple API. It has, if I look at it, it has this resource with a get method. and in the integration request, this is linked to a Lambda function called myCart. And let's see that Lambda function as well. So I'm opening Lambda now. Here you see this myCart function. If I open it, you can see it's a very simple one. So it will just respond with Lambda says, hello, here is your cart. It provides this response and the status code 200. And this is behind my cart functionality for now. Let's look at stages. Here I can grab my URL for the API gateway. And if I'm accessing it right now, you're going to see that it's giving me missing authentication token. If I add cart at the end, it should respond properly. So it says Lambda says, hello, here is your cart. But you see, I didn't provide any authentication information. So I would have to provide something. And that is where the Cognito user pool comes in. I will modify the settings for this API gateway, so only users who provide the authentication header with a proper ID token will be able to access the API gateway. Now, let's see, I'm going to bring up also Postman. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Postman. Postman is a tool that we can use to test APIs, and I need this because I want to send some additional headers with my request, with my GET request. So now it works, you see, but I don't have anything right now provided. I'm going to add here some additional headers here. It will be like this, authorization, and here it should be the ID token. As I said, you will take this ID token in your front end with the Cognito libraries once your user successfully logged in. Okay, so let's go back to API gateway, and what we need to do, we need to set up an authorizer here in the API gateway. And you come here to authorizers, create new authorizer, and let's call this web shop authorizer. And it will be a Cognito authorizer, and it already provides me the only user pool I have in this region. And the token source will be the authorization header. And let's click on create. Now it's created, and we could test it. In order to test it, we need to provide it an ID token. But I don't have any ID token. When I use the hosted UI, it redirected me here to this Majestic.cloud website. So how can I get the token? And that is pretty simple. I'm going to simulate a login from the command line. So basically, I'm going to simulate logging in as this user. I've opened the Cloud Shell, and in Cloud Shell, I'm going to simulate this, this logging in. So here's how you do it. So AWS, this is the command line, the AWS command line. And I'm going to use the CLI, AWS CLI. So AWS Cognito, IDP, admin, initiate, auth. I have to provide the user pool ID. Let me grab that. This is the user pool ID. Let's paste that in. And then I have to provide the client ID. Let me grab that as well. Here from the app integration tab, if you scroll down to the web client, here is the client ID. Let's add this one here as well. And then I have to provide the auth flow. You see, this is why I enabled additional auth flows when I created the user pool. So admin no srp auth, and then I have to provide some auth parameters, and those will be the username, which is in this case hello@majestic.cloud, and the password, which is this very bad password that I've chosen. Never chose such a password. I'm just doing it for demo purposes. So if I do this, I'm going to get back some tokens. So this was successful, and you can see you get back 3 types of tokens: the access token, which expires in an hour, the refresh token, and then also the ID token. And actually I need this ID token, so let's copy this up until here. And now if I go back to my API gateway, and I'm going to use this testing functionality, testing the authorizer, I'm going to paste in the token that I got. Click on test, and you see it decoded the token, and I can see my Cognito username, the email, verified, all kinds of details about the token. Okay, so this has been set up, the authorizer, but I'm also going to need to go back here to this get method, and in the method request I have to set up the authorization, the authorizer, and here I can do it. Now this is a known issue. You have to refresh the page for the authorizer to show up here. I'm not sure why this happens. It's a long known thing. So let's go back to method request, authorization, and here is now my webshop authorizer. And let's click on the check mark, and then we have to deploy our API. And I'm going to use the production stage to deploy it. And now whenever I'm issuing here the request, it should, let's uncheck the authorization header. It should ask me for the authorization. It should say unauthorized. Now it takes a bit of time until it's active. You see I'm starting to get unauthorized. Now I think it deployed successfully. Whenever I try to access this cart endpoint, it says unauthorized. Now what I have to do in order to regain access to this is to provide the authorization header and provide this ID token value that I got back from the simulation, or I mean the logging in of the user, that command line login that I've performed. Normally, as I said earlier, you would get this ID token from the front end when you use the Cognito libraries, and you would get back the token from there. But in this case, I obtained it in some other way because I don't have any front end for my application. So let me go back here, paste in the token, the ID token here, and send the request again. And you see now it's accepting my requests. It says Lambda says, hello, here is your card. And I can send it as many times as I want. It works. If I uncheck it, no longer sending it, I get back unauthorized, unauthorized. So let's check it again to be active. And now I'm sending it and I'm able to access it. If I modify this token and it will make it invalid, I'm going to get unauthorized again. So you see, this works. This is how you do it. Of course, you would have some additional steps if you have a front end where you need to set up also the login flow or get the token from the hosted UI in some other way. But this is the basic setup that you need to do in order to secure your API gateway with Cognito user pools. So I hope you liked this video. If you did, click on the like button, subscribe to the channel, and I hope to see you soon with another video here on Majestic.cloud. Have an awesome day.